Welcome to The Explainer, where we love to break down big ideas. Today, we're going to jump into a scenario that would just completely flip our understanding of reality, of truth, and society itself on its head.
So, let's really dive into this. It's a massive thought experiment. What would it actually mean for everything we think we know if faith suddenly became fact, confirmed by the very methods we use for science?
Well, the very first thing that would happen, it's not subtle. Our most fundamental understanding of truth just shatters. It hits this massive wall of contradictions, and the logical foundation of our entire world begins to crumble.
You know, this basic law of thought, the idea that something can't be true and not true at the exact same time, well, that's the first casualty here. And why? Because so many of the core claims of the world's religions are, mutually exclusive.
And this gets right to the absolute heart of the problem. How in the world can there be only one God and at the same time millions of gods? In this new reality, both are scientifically proven facts. It's a paradox our brains just aren't built to resolve.
And the contradictions don't just stop with the nature of God. Oh no. They just keep piling on, extending to the very essence of what happens after we die and how we achieve salvation. Is the goal Christian heaven, Buddhist Nirvana, or Hindu moksha? Is the one true path through Jesus, or submission to Allah, or the Eightfold Path? All of a sudden, science says the answer is yes, to all of them.
So, this breakdown of logic, it isn't just some abstract puzzle for philosophers to chew on. This would create a massive ripple effect, cascading outwards and starting to unravel the very fabric of our civilization.
This is what some might call an epistemological earthquake. And look, epistemology is just a fancy word for how we know what we know. And in this world, that entire system collapses. The line between faith and data dissolves, authority figures change, and every major institution we rely on has to be rebuilt from the ground up.
This creates a huge shift in who we turn to for answers. The authority of priests, imams, and rabbis, which is built on faith and scripture, well, that would probably be replaced by scientists and researchers who can actually test and verify these spiritual claims. Hypothesis testing would become the new theology.
Okay, so that's the big picture society stuff. But what would all this mean for you on a personal level? How would it change what you believe, who you are, and even the daily lives of people who don't believe in anything at all?
Well, personal faith would be completely transformed. You might see the rise of these cool new Syncretic movements that blend practices from all the proven traditions. Or maybe people would take a religious cafeteria approach, picking and choosing the prayers or meditations that are scientifically shown to be the most effective, no matter where they came from. Your identity could move beyond just one single label.
And what about atheism and secular humanism? I mean, for worldviews built entirely on a foundation of naturalism, the idea that only the natural world exists, this would be a profound existential crisis. Science itself, the very bedrock of their philosophy, would have just disproven its core premise. The irony is just staggering.
The practical effects would seep into every little corner of your life. Your doctor might literally prescribe a scientifically validated prayer therapy right alongside your antibiotics. Your lawyer? They would have to navigate a legal system where completely contradictory divine laws, like Islamic Sharia and Jewish halacha, are both considered empirically true and valid. What a mess.
So faced with this just overwhelming logical and social chaos, humanity would be scrambling. We desperately search for new philosophical frameworks to try and make sense of it all. How could we possibly escape this paradox?
And to try to resolve this, two big ideas would probably emerge. The first is a version of the perennial philosophy. This suggests that all religions are just using different cultural maps to point to the very same destination. The other idea is what you could call a hierarchical truth. This one says, yes, all the religions are true, but they're describing different levels of a much bigger, multi-layered reality.
This idea of a hierarchical truth, what does that even look like? Well, maybe it means that Christian heaven, Islamic paradise, and the Hindu swarga aren't actually competing destinations. Maybe they're just different realms or different floors within a much larger cosmic structure. Different paths just lead to different but equally real places.
But look, even with these potential philosophical escape routes, the challenge of actually living in this new world would be immense. It would force every single one of us to rethink the very nature of what truth even is.
Ultimately, human nature itself might be the biggest hurdle.
I mean, how would you scientifically test a unique, one-time miracle, like a resurrection? And even with solid proof, would people just deny the findings that challenge their lifelong beliefs? You can bet on it. New conflicts could even pop up, not over which religion is true, but which one is scientifically more effective.
You know, what this whole thought experiment really does is force us to consider that maybe reality is just far more complex and way more paradoxical than any of our current systems, whether they're religious or scientific, can handle. Maybe real wisdom isn't about finding the single right answer, but about learning to embrace the mystery.
And that brings us to the final, and maybe the most important question. This isn't just a philosophical puzzle anymore. It's deeply personal. In a world where all faith is fact, where paradox is just another part of reality, what would you choose to believe?